All right. Okay, so welcome everyone to another career chat with the virtual EDE program with Schools That Can. We're happy that you guys are here and watching this. So we have a very special session today. We are going to be talking about math careers, and we have 5 professionals who all work at Prudential. Some are in actuary, some are in financial services. They're going to explain what that means in a minute. But we are really excited to have them all here to talk to you more about how they got into their careers, what math careers look like, the ones that they have, and maybe some other ones that you may want to think about. And then we will go through some questions with them, and we're excited to learn all about it. So with that, I'm going to ask each of our panelists to just introduce themselves, say, who they are, what they do at Prudential, like what their title is, if they're in New Jersey or Connecticut, because I think we have at least one person from Connecticut here, and anything introduction-wise they want to say just about themselves. And then we'll go into much more detail with them about how they got to where they are and what their job actually entails. So I think I'll just go through in the order in the slide. So Matt, if you'd like to start us off.
Yes, I'm Matt Taylor, as it says on the slide. So we have a lot of names for our roles, and I don't want to go into too technical, but I'm in a finance rotational program, and so is Sarah, Ian, and Jimena. This is my first year, and it's also Jimena's first year. And right now I'm in accounting-ish role. So I think that's the best way I can explain it without going too far into the details. And I think that's it.
That's great. All right, Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Delancey. As Matt mentioned, I am also in the finance program. So it's my second year in the program, and currently I am in the international insurance business, working on the Japan reporting team. So also very accounting based, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Thank you.
Great. Ian.
Yep, so my name is Ian Tadaro. Like both Matt and Sarah, I am a associate in the Finance Leadership Development Program. I'm actually in my last year, so I'll be graduating the program in July, and we'll be posting out into my permanent role, as some call it. So as they both mentioned, it's a 3-year program, 3 different experiences, all finance and accounting related. My current rotation is in corporate development. It's a little bit different than some of the other roles we have in finance. Our team is mainly responsible for all the acquisitions and divestitures across all of Prudential's businesses, as well as some strategic projects too. So get a little bit more into that later, but that's the high level.
So you say you mean like buying and selling of
yeah, M&A.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. All right, Jimena.
Hi everyone. So I'm Jimena. I'm, like people mentioned, they're in the financial rotational program, and as Ian said, it's every year you rotate into a new role. My first rotation is in annuities financial reporting, which is basically has to do with it just has to do with analyzing the numbers of accounting. And yeah, I think everyone else kind of covered it.
Great. And then Jake, you're our lone actuary. So tell us about yourself.
Sure. So my name is Jake Colello. I work in Hartford, Connecticut, and I'm in the actuarial program. So we also have rotations like finance. And currently it's my second year at Prudential, and currently I'm in the annuities financial reporting side as well.
Great. So let's jump into this a little bit more. And I was hoping that a couple of you could maybe just talk a little bit about what's the difference between finance and actuary. Like, what does that mean as far as like the type of math and like what you do? I think it's particularly interesting that 2 of you are almost in the same team, but one from the actuary standpoint, one from finance. So maybe we could start with the 2 of you kind of explaining, not getting too technical, but kind of giving us an idea of how these are different types of careers, even though you're in similar roles. I don't know who would like to start on that, either Jake or Jimena.
I could start if you want. I'll start by saying I think there's a lot of overlap, especially in something like financial reporting. We work every day very closely with finance. So I almost think of it as a finance rotation for myself. But actuarial does have its own numbers and balances that they're kind of responsible for reporting. and finance has theirs. So there is a distinction in kind of what we're analyzing and how we're explaining certain things. There is definitely a lot of overlap.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that. So I do agree that there's a lot of overlap and how you use math. So I was actually a math major in college, and I would say that in finance, you're using math more of a strategic version of it as to like how you're analyzing the numbers and what is really making you get to your end result. Whereas in actuary, and definitely feel free to chime in, Jacob, since I didn't choose actuary. I see it more as like when you do the models and seeing the numbers aspect of it, you're kind of seeing where the numbers are coming from and you're analyzing it in that perspective. But it's kind of like you guys are working together, but it's at the same time, the modeling aspect is modeling and you see more of it in that sense. And the finance aspect is more of like, okay, where is it going? What do the actual numbers mean? Actuals being like the numbers that you see how the company is doing. So that's how I see it using math.
Yeah, I would certainly agree. You know, you mentioned the model building, and it requires us to make a lot of assumptions and a lot of judgment, and it does kind of cross the bridge into sometimes theoretical math and textbook math, I like to call it, versus, you know, the actual numbers you were just talking about. So I personally enjoy, I like a lot of times I'll see stuff at work that I remember studying in school. So sometimes it does go into that realm of the math world, but I think that's a really good distinction you made.
So I think sorry, I just want to add one more thing. I think it's really important to have it. And when you have this math background in finance and in actuary, you kind of understand it both sides, right? Because math gives you a different perspective. And so for example, I studied math. I loved math. I didn't think actuary was the path for me. I chose finance. But at the same time, because I have that background, when I work with actuary, I understand also, like, you know, when we talk about these models, granted, since I'm not super trained in the models, I can't see like in the detail, but at the same time, I know what they're talking about. And I think that's really important. And I'm sure Jake can also say that, like, when he talks to finance people, it's vice versa as well.
Well, I just find it exciting to hear that you guys said that you actually use the math you learned in school, that it's actually helpful, because we hear from students all the time, like, when am I ever going to use this? You know, and it sounds like you guys actually use some of it, which is pretty exciting. Which makes me want to like switch a little bit, and maybe I can turn this to Matt, Sarah, and Ian to talk a little bit about like, you know, how did you get interested in this career? How were you inspired to do it? And you know, do you use the math you learned in high school and college? And if so, like, you know, how did that work? What's your path, I think? So I don't know who wants to go first on that.
Yeah, Aaron, I can go first. I think to your question about being interested in the world of finance, I think that was relatively early on for me. I'm not exactly sure what I wanted to do in that realm, but you know, I had taken a few finance classes in high school, very rudimentary, you know, 101 type courses. Took an accounting course in high school and sort of knew from there that I really liked numbers, really liked math. Maybe not as much math as Jake likes, because the actuarial world is a whole different beast. But knew that that was something I wanted to do. And, you know, had gone through college and studied accounting and minored in economics, and knew that finance is probably where I was going to land. Having gone to school in Newark, you know, Prudential was right there, and that connection made a ton of sense to me. So it felt like, even though I wasn't actually making the decision to be in finance, it seems like I was sort of building or putting the building blocks together for quite a while, but sort of has gotten me where I am now. And then to your question about, do I use what I learned in school? You know, I think Pru is, like a lot of large organizations, we have a ton of our own lingo, a ton of our own you know, ratios we're concerned about, measures that we either borrow from other places or create on our own. So because of that, there's a lot of stuff that sort of just to learn on the job, but very fundamental finance topics like, you know, DCF, present value, some of those fundamental math and finance concepts, I think, especially in my job now in M&A, are sort of extremely important. So I think it's sort of a blend for us in finance, of using sort of so math terminology and math concepts that you learn in school, but then also trying to understand the jargon of Prudential, which is ever growing.
Yeah, can only imagine. Sarah or Matt?
So I could answer, it's kind of similar to what Ian said. So I always knew that I liked math when I was younger, even through elementary school. In high school, I actually was placed into an accounting elective class. And at first I was kind of unhappy with it because I had heard it was going to be a lot of work and it wasn't so much of a fun elective like other things. So I went in, and I'll say within the first week, I really realized that this was something I was interested in, and the way that the numbers, I'll say, like tied to each other, and just everything was black and white. It was right or wrong. And I really, really enjoyed that. So I knew from high school that I wanted to study accounting in college. So when I was in college studying accounting, I learned about, these finance careers and how you don't have to just be a finance major to have a finance career. It could be a bunch of things. Like Ian said, it could be accounting, econ, finance, obviously. But just having that mixture, I think, was really valuable because I can take the accounting knowledge I have and I can learn so much more. Also following what Ian said, we don't use the exact math that we learned in school, but it is really the fundamentals that you take with you and the building blocks you learn in school. It might not be an exact formula that you're learning in geometry that you're going to use at work, but it's just the idea and like the way that you think and the way that you can solve problems that becomes really, really helpful. So even if you think the formula might be a little bit out there, you might not need it later on, it's really important to think it through and realize that it makes sense and you'll use something, a variation of that later on.
Definitely, and I would just echo that. My favorite subject always was math growing up. Unlike most people, I think, have said that they had some accounting or finance class. I didn't have any of those classes in high school. I only had math, but I knew that I was interested in business and math in some aspect. And so once I got to college, I started taking classes in accounting and finance. I really liked accounting to begin with, but when I talked to people from the auditing firms such as PwC, Ernst & Young, all those firms, what they told me their day-to-day wasn't as interesting to me. So that's why I decided to go into finance as my major, and then ended up here. And then, just like Sarah said, I think this is really important to know. Maybe not just maybe not the formulas and things like that from high school, but the problem-solving skills and what you do during math are always used and used during today. And I think that's mainly kind of what my job has been.
So hearing from you guys, it sounds like college is a requirement for this career. So perhaps Jake and Jimena, do you want to share a little bit about your path as well, how you came to this career?
You could go first.
Okay. So I was just going to say, yeah, as everyone said, I loved math ever since I was like really young. It was just, it was really cool because it was something that I was comfortable in. And I think that's where the confidence grew. And then I liked it enough to major it in college. So I majored in math and econ at the same time. Reason being was because I wasn't sure I wanted to go into business, and math for me was super applicable to anything I could do. You could just carry that skill elsewhere, anywhere. And I thought that, all right, I'm interested in business and maybe I can leverage something with math. And I ended up doing that. So when I was talking to Prudential and I interviewed for my first internship, I actually talked about math and about how I think it's very essential that you have a really good basic math background to have in finance. And it's because of what everyone said, it's the building blocks. I see it as math, there's a solution to a problem, but there's so many different methods that you can take to solve that problem. And that's really what you need in like life and in business, is that there's so many different perspectives out there. And instead of matching the numbers, you really need to see where you're going with it and what different problems you can do, So I thought that finance just made sense. I thought that it was a very big basic building block to start my career. And I definitely like my first rotation in, I agree with it. I am not the typical accountant, I wouldn't say, but like everyone else said, math is something that is just an easy transition to business.
Yeah, I would agree, and I don't want to sound repetitive because I agree with what everyone else said. But I myself always took a general interest into math, into business, finance. I always followed the stock market and whatnot. So studying it in school, I went to UConn, which has a pretty big actuarial program relative to other schools. And there were a lot of actuaries there that taught there and students as well. So I always weighed actuarial and finance. I always considered both. I figured I'd give actuarial a shot. And I really enjoyed kind of the mix between like theoretical math and then the real business application to it and combining it. So I interned at Prudential. I was lucky enough to get an internship and experience some day-to-day work, and I really enjoyed it. So I decided to stick with actuarial. And yeah, the way I view my schooling in math is, yes, like you bring the fundamentals with you, but it's more so establishing a framework of how to think and how to solve problems. And I think if you get that framework, you could really go anywhere with your math skills, whether it be business, finance, programming, computers, whatever it may be. So I think that I view the schooling as problem-solving school, not necessarily actuarial science. But yeah.
So that brings up an interesting question that is in my mind, not being someone who studied math, is thinking about like, so if I'm somebody who's going to college, very interested in math, enjoy math, but I'm not really sure where I want to go with that. You guys have talked a little bit about your careers with actuary and finance, specifically to Prudential, and some of you have mentioned some other pathways, such as like with accounting firms or other types of firms. But I wonder, what are some other career paths that you've seen math majors go on to do, or maybe even that you had considered when you were trying to figure out where the right fit was for you? Does anyone have any thoughts on that they've seen?
Yeah, Erin, maybe one that I gave some serious thought to was actually becoming a math teacher. It's something I thought about for a long time. I liked the idea of teaching. I liked the idea of mentoring. I thought that might be a good way, to both use what I've learned in school and math, but also some of that management and leadership stuff that I was looking for that now I'm trying to gain in corporate America. I thought that might be a good way for me to do so, in the education system. And then I also always had a knack for wanting to coach football, so I thought maybe I could do that at the same time.
Oh, nice. Anyone else have another possible career that they consider, or you see, colleagues from college that went off and did with math?
Definitely. I have my friends that were math majors. Well, some of them would do math and comp sci together, so they would do computer science and mash that together. And now they're working in software development. I personally don't understand the computer science as much, so I can't speak as much to that. I've also had friends with math majors go into other sides of finance, whereas we're kind of on the, like in the actual financials, like more accounting based, and we're looking at Prudential's financials, but you can work in other parts where you're helping people's investments, so like wealth management, or we have an asset management business at Prudential as well. That's another path, even though that's not any of our paths right here, the finance people that are here. But there are definitely different other paths that people took with finance, in finance, that were math related as well.
Yeah, I've seen people become software engineers, work for big tech companies, or even utilize it, as Matt said, for different careers in business. So like I have some friends who became investment bankers, and it was really leveraging their math background. Because I will say, and something that I've even experienced is, so I majored in both math and economics, but a lot of people hold math to a higher standard. So when someone says like, oh, you majored in math, for some reason that like correlates to you being like, oh, you survived math. Like, so I think it's really funny to like hear that, and like also hear other math majors in college experience the same thing. So that's pretty funny.
Anyone else on that? Or, and if not, one of the things that it makes me think about as well is, you know, there's two kind of pieces to my next question, which is, one is, when you're in high school, what are the kinds of things you could be doing to prepare yourself for a career in math? And that may depend on the high school and what it has to offer, but I'm curious if you could go back to your high school self, or even think about, and some of you mentioned some of the things you did in high school with courses you took, but, you know, what should a high school student be thinking of or doing to strengthen their skills and be ready for these careers? And then the second piece that I want to talk about is more the college side of it, like how recruiting works and all that. So maybe we'll start with the high school piece. Anybody have thoughts or advice of what a high school student should be doing now to prepare for these types of careers?
So I can start with that. As you mentioned, all high schools are different. They have different courses available. But I think it's important for anyone who thinks they have an interest in math or anything related to just try a couple of different courses. If your school has something that, you know, you're not sure if you really will like it or not, the perfect time to do it is in high school. It doesn't hurt at all. It doesn't, you know, cost any college credits, anything like that. So try to find something that you really enjoy doing. So try to pair what you're good at and what you like doing, and high school is just the best time to do it. So throw yourself out of your comfort zone, you know, maybe pick a class that your friends don't want to do, or that you never really wanted to do, but you think, you know, maybe I will enjoy that. So definitely throw yourself out there. This is the perfect time. There's really no risk to it.
And really just grab on the opportunity to kind of go out there and do more than what they give you. Not every high school is the same. And at the same time, it's like there are so many resources out there online. I know there's some different universities also offer free online classes for certain math levels. So you really like look into that and say yes to that opportunity. I feel like a lot of the times, I know when I was in high school, the highest math level I took was BC Calc and multivariable calculus and AP Stat at the same time, and I was okay with that. And I was like, oh, I'm fine with this. Like this is like really like I think I'm advanced. And then when I got to college, I realized that some people took even higher math classes. And I'm not saying to push yourself. If you have other things on your plate, like be self-aware as to what you have. But if you have that free time, take advantage of it. Don't go crazy and be like math. But definitely like kind of see where you're at and challenge yourself, right? Like it's not enough that it's like right now you're just doing it for a grade. Like really challenge yourself and try to push that knowledge in trying to grow and better yourself. Because I feel like that's really what got me to my career right now. I got into Prudential not because I'm not from Jersey. I didn't study in Jersey, and I don't have like family members or family friends who worked at Prudential. I went to NYU, and I really just said yes to this leadership conference that took place in Prudential. And I really met a great network, and I really liked the culture of the company. So I came back for an internship, and then I came back for a job. So it really just say yes to opportunity, I feel like. And that also goes with saying yes to growth and knowledge.
On the opposite end of the spectrum, to not like scare anyone, I honestly took AP Calc, but my first year was at AB. It was so long ago I forget. But that was like mainly probably the only math opportunity I took. And there were a lot of gen education classes. So my freshman and sophomore year, so I wasn't really getting into anything math specific or finance specific, business specific in the beginning. Of course, on the side, I would do things, for example, listening to something like this or listening to people speak that are in finance. I would do stuff like that. And I do agree to take the opportunity, but also don't be scared when people were talking about it, because I mean, I was kind of had no idea what I wanted to do, and I only really like did a bit of math and a bit of what my career ended up being, and near the end of my college career even. But like everyone said, it's kind of the principles that you build in the beginning that help you along the way. So not to agree with what they said, but also don't worry if you feel like you're behind and hearing things going on. So I just wanted to add that too.
That's a good point, Matt. I think the other thing that, when you were speaking, I kind of thought of, I got to AP Calc in high school, and I'm like, I think this is it for me in math. I got to sort of pivot and see what else is out there. And I think that's the perfect time to do sort of the course correction. So I was lucky enough that, my high school had a pretty robust business program. So I was able to take investments classes, marketing classes. So because of that, I kind of was able to take things I liked about math, which was adding, subtracting, dividing, and multiplying, and then, pivot that to, personal finance, accounting, some more capital markets facing type coursework. So I think both knowing what you want to do and also giving yourself the ability to change course if that's what you need to do. I think the earlier you do that, the better, both in high school and in college.
Yeah, it got briefly mentioned, but I want to stress the amount of opportunity that's out there on the internet, even whether it be free courses or even on YouTube. I feel like you could get a whole education on YouTube. I use it myself a ton. But there are courses you could sign up for free even, or at a low cost. I forget the name of the websites, but I think there's plenty of them. And whether it be learning a new programming language or just taking classes and watching videos, I feel like it could really give you a leg up, not only on your college coursework, but I think it was just something that I wish I took more advantage of at a younger age. And I realize now how much opportunity there is out there with those types of courses.
Well, and then now shifting a little bit to the college side. So one thing that I feel like you obviously all went through was the hiring process with Prudential. And one thing I remember from when I was in college, not being like a math or science person, was that I felt like all my friends who were studying math or econ or science, they always had these campus recruiting events. Like there were always all these people on campus for them. The rest of us were like, what's that about? And they were always doing internships, and these they would get the internships in October for the next summer. And I thought, this is ridiculous. We barely started class and they already know what they're doing next summer. So could you guys talk a little bit about what your experiences were with that? So if I'm a high school senior now, I'm going off to college next year, I think I might major in something math related. Is there something I should be doing freshman year already to start exploring this? When am I too late, in a sense, to take advantage of these things, or how could I make the most of freshman year and then as I go through college, so I don't miss out on these opportunities?
Yeah, Erin, it's a good point. And I think to the point you made, I don't know if that's ever really too late to start doing it, but I definitely don't. On the other side, I don't think it's ever too early to start doing it. So one thing I try to take advantage of, I think I might have mentioned at the top that I went to Rutgers in Newark. And because of the proximity to, and Hemedika talks to this because she, went to school in the city, because of the proximity to Manhattan and a ton of different financial services companies, we had information sessions on campus, what felt like 4 or 5 days a week with different companies. So everyone from Pru to JP Morgan, PwC, EY, sort of all the heavy hitters were on campus. And even if I didn't, a lot of those companies didn't have internships available to freshmen or sophomores. But even if they didn't, I sort of wanted to show my face and get to meet people and start to build my network. So I would say those information sessions is a great way to get started. But then also crucial, in my opinion, was sort of developing a LinkedIn with a pretty strong network and sort of keeping up with those networks, not just, connecting with people just to connect, but actually maintaining connections with people on LinkedIn. It's surprising how much activity goes through LinkedIn nowadays from a hiring perspective. So I think that's only good. And it was that way when I was in school, and I'm sure it's even more so now. So I think those are the two things I would really focus on as an underclassman is those information sessions and utilizing LinkedIn to your benefit.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with LinkedIn and everything. I do want to say though, something that I learned going into freshman year of college was there's three main things that you really need to take advantage of. Freshman year is the network. So for example, even though I was a math and econ major, I wasn't in the business school. So a lot of at NYU, like NYU Stern is a very known business school. And they have so many recruiting events and so many different resources for their business students. But because I wasn't in the business school, it's not like I was aware of them. So you really need to form your network. And when I say form your network, I know that's a fancy term, but it's really just having friends and kind of being in the know. So it's kind of a lot of word of mouth. Someone's like, oh, what are you up to? Getting ready for this coffee chat that EY is hosting. It's like, oh, I didn't know there was a coffee chat because I'm not in the mailing distribution. So then it's like, okay, signing up for the mailing distributions. How do you get the mailing distribution? Through your friends who also know. So, and then at the same time, you also want to be able to share that information to your other friends who don't know so that it's everyone's kind of helping out each other. And then getting that network with your teachers and faculty members is really important. That's how I even found out about the leadership conference at Prudential, was because I was in student council and they told me, hey, want to apply for this? And I said, sure. And then I got into Prudential. So it's really like having that network and having those relationships. So the network really just means relationships with your peers, which is your other students, and your teachers and faculty members, and just asking questions when it happens. And then second, I think that you really need to just step out of your comfort zone and grasp on that opportunity. So as a freshman, I straight up walked out of class one time. I saw there was a long line, people dressed up. I was wearing jeans and like just a regular shirt. And I kind of just went through a career fair that I had no idea was going on, but I just kind of did it. And then I got some interviews because I put myself out there. And I was a freshman, like I had nothing to lose. It's never too late to go through this recruiting process, but it's never too early as well, because sometimes you're not looking for an internship, but you kind of want to see what it's about. So if you don't get an internship your freshman year, that's fine. I know a lot of times you'll get stressed out because other people will have internships, but just take a deep breath. It's fine. It'll be okay. At the end of the day, I'm a huge believer of everything will work out. And now being in the recruiting process now, because I'm part of the recruiting for NYU, I see that the difference between two candidates is really just putting yourself out there and being confident and just understanding that I'm here to learn. And if you give me an opportunity, I'll take it. And that's really what, through the people that I recruit with, that's what we're looking for, really.
Anyone else want to talk a little bit about the college recruitment process, things that you wish you had done or things you know of in the freshman year especially?
So I will add on to a little bit what Ian said. You know, when you're going to all these info sessions for different companies, you might not be looking exactly for an internship your freshman year, but it is really helpful because the company will come and talk to you about what they do and different careers that they have available. At the same time, they'll talk about the timeline that they have for their internships. Maybe you're a freshman and you hear them saying like, we recruit sophomores and juniors. So you can kind of keep a note of that so that next year, you know, this company is looking for people of my age group. So you know that you can go in and you can network maybe a little bit harder, I'll say, and you want to go in and talk to them and things like that because you know that you're prepared, that you want to apply for this year. Me personally, I didn't have an internship in college until after my junior year, which was with Prudential, but I didn't start as early as I really wish I had. Starting freshman year and going to all the info sessions, there's really so much to be gained from that. You know, go to the career fairs, even if you're not about to graduate or you're not looking for an internship, it's still really good practice to go and to talk to the companies and just see what they're all about. And they'll tell you about different programs they have. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Don't feel like you're too young. You're going to learn so much from doing it that when you are at the point where you need a job or an internship, you'll already have a great foundation and you'll feel really confident going to those events.
That's great. I just wanted to add, I know that there are some opportunities as well that exist, such as SEO and some other nonprofits and organizations that help students of color specifically in the process of trying to get into careers. I know they have an SEO that's specific to math and like finance careers, I believe, and there's also ones for law, for students that want to apply to law school, I think. So there are a lot of those opportunities, and I do believe that Prudential, I know, I think some of the banks like JP Morgan and Goldman and stuff have some programs for freshmen, students of color who maybe are interested in those careers as well, or for women. So I just wanted to flag that in case you guys, when you get to campus, you start seeing these opportunities, or talk to the career office to make sure you don't miss out on those as well.
Erin, can I just interrupt you really quick? I think it's a good point. I think it's something that either Jimena or Sarah mentioned earlier. In finance at Prudential, we actually have an externship. I think we still have it. That's for that population exactly, freshmen and sophomores who are looking to express interest in a career at Prudential or an internship to begin with. So that's something we have as well. We have some conferences. We have externships that happen in between, the fall and spring semesters, and I think that's another great way to sort of get introduced to the company and start to build your network a bit.
Awesome. That's great. That's great to hear. And one thing too, I just want to say, to students watching this, that yes, everybody on this panel is at Prudential, and most of them are in the Newark office. But and I know I've heard from some students who are math folks that went to school in Newark in high school, and they were like, I don't want to stay in Newark. I want to leave. Why would I want to stay? And I just want to encourage everybody to think about Prudential as a potential career option. It is here in our city, and we see it every day. It's part of our life, and so why not be part of a company, even if it's here in Newark, and think about it, because I do think, those students that have participated in the PACE program that Schools That Can helps to facilitate with Prudential, you guys already have hopefully a little bit of a head start when it comes to the college programs that Prudential offers, but we'd love to see some Newark high school students continue on and eventually run Prudential, be the head. That would be great. So one day.
Erin, I'm sorry, I just wanted to add something to that as well, because as somebody who went to school in Newark, I joke around with my friends that like Newark's my adopted city, because I've been there for now, I guess in total, like 7 or 8 years. And it's kind of amazing as somebody who's not from Newark originally, like where Newark was when I first started at Rutgers and call it 2012, 2013, to where it is now, how much it's changed has been amazing. And how much it's going to continue to change. I think Prudential plays a big part of that, both from a community outreach, just socially, but also a financial responsibility that I think that Pru takes in building Newark up. I think those are two things that I sort of find very valuable and sort of align with my own values. And I think as much as we can give back to the community, as much as we can, bring talent from Newark to Pru, I think that would be great.
That's great. So I did want to give you guys a little bit of, before we go to closing statements and stuff, one thing we've noticed when we do the sessions in the classrooms with math students is that they actually want to hear a little bit about the type of math that you guys use from day to day. And so I was hoping a few of you could give some examples of some of the types of math that you do. Like, what are the types of, like, what's a sample of like a problem you may face in your job that you then are using math to try to solve? And it's, you could be a little technical. I mean, like, don't use too many like lingo that we wouldn't know, but like, give us kind of an idea of what's the type of math problems that you actually solve, and how do you use the math to solve those problems? Anyone have thoughts?
Yeah, Erin, maybe I can start just so going back to sort of the role that I'm in now is in corporate development. And again, our group's mainly responsible for all M&A activity throughout the company. So a big part of that is financial modeling. And as we go out and look for companies that we'd like to acquire, there's a lot of work that goes around the value of those businesses, the price that we can get for the business, earnings projections for the business. So all of that gets wrapped up into a very rudimentary DCF model where we're discounting cash flows. So that's a very basic, math concept as well as present value. So I think in my current job, the biggest application of math and how we use math is sort of in those very basic finance 101 type of concepts, and how they wrap into valuation and how we go out and acquire companies.
Anyone else?
I'd say mainly I'll say this: my job is on Excel basically all day. That's mainly it. And what I'm doing on Excel, it's usually you have this data and you have to kind of take it and using formulas on Excel, which usually are just using normal math functions. So like even addition, division, all that, multiplication, simple things like that are what I'm using. And it's kind of like word problems, I guess, when you look at it. Like there's this data that you need to kind of just figure out and tell a story, and also to like reconcile things. So to make sure that everything's checking out. So it's kind of the basic math functions that you're using on Excel and using formulas and all that to do it. But the data is more complex and you just have to look into it more. So I guess that's where it's kind of word problem-esque. But my entire day is mainly Excel and using formulas and trying to think of ways to figure out issues.
Yeah, my day is also using formulas in Excel, but one example I could think of in my previous role was we were responsible for making assumptions for our current business and our existing business. And some of our existing business goes back, 30 years or so, where, and there may be only, a few policies still in force. So the data that's available for that business isn't necessarily a lot. So one of the challenges that we faced was how much.
All right, hold on. Jake, are you there? I feel like you've frozen for me.
Much credibility you could have because, oh,
Okay,
you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. So just say that last part again.
Yeah, no, so one that, like, if you don't have a lot of data, one of the challenges that you face, you can't put 100% confidence into it. So you kind of have to use mathematical concepts to establish a form of credibility which basically says how good is this data, and then for the rest, you kind of have to use judgment and other sources of data. So that's one example I could think of.
Yeah, and as everyone said, Excel is like such a big part of my day-to-day functions as well. But something that I want to kind of highlight is, so since I'm in financial reporting, I work on the monthly close, quarter close, and annual close, which basically just means where is the business at the month, the quarter, or the year. And so for the monthly close, which I'm in right now, we see, or all the closes really, you see what are the changes. Where has the company gone to and what changes have been made? So you see so much of percent changes, you see actual changes. It's just really like seeing the differences and then highlighting what's driving those differences. And you do that through models, you do that through different formulas. Definitely mental math is a big thing that at least my team kind of wants, just because it's just a lot easier just when you see these numbers and like just quickly round up and kind of calculate the percent change. It's not necessary, but I see that at least in my team culture, it's kind of like, I guess you just do it. But yes, it's a lot of changes, percent changes, and what's going on.
Great. Well, at this point, what I want to do as we wrap up is give each of you a chance to just say some final thoughts, maybe. Again, be able to just provide your words of wisdom to our high school students and even their teachers who might be watching this, about what your thoughts are as you finish this up. Math careers, motivating students to pursue them and not run away from them. So perhaps we'll go in the opposite order from the beginning. So I guess we'll start with Jake, and then we'll go backwards on the slide.
Sure. So words of wisdom, I guess, to students watching would be to not be afraid to take initiative and put yourself out there. You know, definitely take that step of emailing someone out of the blue and saying, hey, could I pick your brain, or could we set up 15 minutes to chat? And whoever that may be, it could be a friend, it could be someone you talk to at a career fair or a conference. So my advice would be, don't be afraid. You know, you're young. Even if you're a freshman, you have nothing to lose. Go for that internship, go for that opportunity. I wish I was definitely more bold and took more initiative. So that would be my advice to juniors and seniors and upcoming freshmen in college.
Great. Jimena?
So I would say that there's two pieces of advice really. The first one being that education is key. And that is not just education from what you're studying, but also education what you want to do. Learn about what is actually going on in whatever field it is you want to do, whether that's actuary, finance, something else. Research it. And when I say research it, don't just open a book and read it, but talk to people about it. Don't be afraid, as Jake said, to start the initiative and message someone on LinkedIn, to just ask about their experiences. My favorite go-to phrase when I was a freshman in college was, hi, I'm Jimena. I'm a freshman, and I said what I studied. And then I said, I'm just interested in learning about your career. Let me know if there's any opportunities where I can get insight in it. And companies love that. To people like that, because they want to give back. They remember how it is when they were in that position. So definitely take advantage of that and do your homework with that. And then the second one is really just say yes to the opportunity. It doesn't come knocking twice. If there is a real reason for you to say no to a good opportunity, definitely weigh your options, and don't let it be just because either out of fear or out of limitations. Like, kind of figure it out with someone to see, is it really possible to say yes to that opportunity?
Great. Ian?
Still on mute. Yeah, I think I'd echo a lot of what Jimena just mentioned. I think the one thing I'd add is something that helped me pretty early on is Rutgers Newark had this peer mentoring program that would pair sort of college seniors with college freshmen, which was helpful because I think what I'm getting at is having a mentor that can guide you along, and doesn't necessarily need to be somebody that's already at a company or in the workforce or even your advisors in school, but having somebody at the sort of the peer level to help walk you through, how do I navigate, information sessions, how do I navigate these mock interviews, or I think finding somebody that can kind of be your partner along the way and help guide you. I found that extremely valuable. The person that was paired to me, I'm still in contact to this day. He works at Goldman Sachs. So though our careers are a bit different, there are some parallels, and it's nice to kind of give back when you can. So to the point Jimena made, people like sharing their stories. I think that's why we're all here. But they also like to mentor people because they were mentored. And I think it's one of those things that you pass it down as you go along your career. And I think in my current position, as much as I enjoy mentoring incoming people, I also enjoy being mentored by people that are more senior than me. So I think it's always a two-way street, and trying to find good mentors is a really good way to get off to a good start.
Great. And then Sarah?
So I'll say, if you're listening to this, or if you've participated in any of the other events that the Schools at Ken Newark runs, I think you should be really proud of yourself. I think you're taking advantage of a really great resource that I personally wish that I had in high school. I know that I participated in the mock interviews last week, and I actually did an interview with a sophomore. And it was pretty mind-blowing to me to think about, freshmen and sophomores in high school are really thinking about their futures in such a serious way. So I think you should definitely pat yourself on the back for that, and just, keep getting involved in everything that you have in front of you. Like, keep doing any session that comes your way. And like I said earlier, by the time you get to the fact that you need to job hunt or you need to internship hunt, all of these experiences that you've had along the way are going to help you tremendously. And when you sit down for an interview, you're just going to feel really confident with yourself. So be proud of where you're at and definitely continue to take advantage of all the resources that are offered to you.
That's great. And then Matt.
Basically, what everyone said, I agree with it all. One, like Sarah said, and I think it's great to mention, is that like pat yourself on the back for joining on something like this, because like I said earlier, I don't think I was as on top of my game when looking into things like this when I was earlier on in high school. And I had to make up for it when I got to college. And then another thing that Ian said that I thought stood out to me was when he was saying how maybe talking to another student first when you get to college, like a senior student. Because I reached out to, in the end, before I finally chose to come to Prudential, I would just LinkedIn message people, anyone that were alumni from my college. I would say, hey, like, I'm interested in your career, blah, blah, blah. Say that, and can you get on the phone with me for 15 minutes? And they were more than welcome to do it, but I would have been so scared to do that if I hadn't talked to some seniors before that or things like that. So I think that's the first step, really, is to talk to people that are at your school. And then once that's done, you can, like everyone has said, reach out to people that are alumni, because people are willing to help and people want to tell their story, just as everyone said. So basically just the summary of what everyone has said. It's great advice, and just a little personal tone to it. But yeah, great advice everyone said. So.
Well, thank you guys so much. We're so pleased to have all of you guys here with us today. For students that are watching this, you see on the slide everybody's LinkedIn and their email addresses. So like they said, you know, if you want to reach out, you should reach out. I know I personally will go to events and people ask for my card. I'll give them my card. I'll never hear from them again. So, you know, that's the first step, is getting the information, but then you actually have to follow up. So feel free to reach out to them or connect with them on LinkedIn. So you can start building your network now. And then when you get to college and all of that, you can ask them questions as well as you go along. So I just want to thank you guys all so much for helping us out today and being here. Let me, okay, stop the recording.